You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hello, everyone. We're back at Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Francu, and I have a pleasure of having an interesting guest today, Maria Granzotti from Scottsdale, Arizona, with a plethora of experience in being a healthcare professional and also a healthcare business leader.
Well, thanks for having me, Tudor. I really appreciate it. I myself love biographies and insights from individuals, so I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I look forward to a nice conversation with you. And as I said, I want to kind of deconstruct your recipe for success so far. So just to start over, if you can give us a little bit of overview of your career, how did you start and where are you now?
Well, I will say that the reason I am in healthcare, just going way back, I tell everybody I'm 24, although I'm obviously not 24. My grandmother, who was one of my best friends, was an RN for over 50 years. In fact, I still have her Merck manual from 1934. And that was back in the day when she really had to be a jack of all trades. So she would go to the clinic, to the hospital, to the OR suite, to the ER in her local community hospital, and then out to the farm. I don't think the woman ever slept. So that was my impetus to get into healthcare, because she was very selfless and always looking to help and make an impact in her community and her neighbors, in her city, so in her farm. But that was the start of it all. And my mother actually has, you're going to laugh, but she has a picture of my sister and I. She's also a physician, my sister. We're a year apart, a year and 6 days. And there's a picture of a birthday cake. We're like 2 and 3 years old. I'm the older one. And I am quite upset because one of the birthday gifts is a little red, remember the old red plastic doctor's bags? And I know that it's fake stuff in the bag. It's not real stuff. So I really always had this inherent desire to go into healthcare. So that's way, way back. Yeah.
Very nice. What are your projects right now that you're taking care of?
Well, after being an ER physician, I did internal medicine residency. And at the time, I was going to bridge a year with teaching in the ER. I was at Rush Presbyterian in Chicago. So I ended up practicing ER full time for over 20 years. And then I knew there was so much more to do. So I wanted to go into the quality, safety, regulatory, risk management, medical staff realm. And that was in the day of EMR implementations and meaningful use and the start of interoperability, or what we thought we were going to be able to achieve. So I was in executive administration for over 15 years. So now I am actually doing some consulting in various spaces, including value-based care. In addition, dabbling with cybersecurity. And it's kind of funny to say dabbling in cybersecurity, but there's a lot of different approaches. And I actually got connected with an outfit that has a novel approach to this. And then I'm also working in the space of talent acquisition is another thing I'm doing. I've always liked to connect the dots and see how the ecosystem functions as a whole. And obviously the common thread in all of that, Tudor, as you probably already hear, is the quality space. The quality is the common thread in all of that, and the safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You're someone who started off in healthcare, practicing physician, and kind of geared off into the administration, part of leadership type of activity. So in your view, what do you think success means to you?
In my view, success is really taking the gifts and the talents that individuals have and maximizing those, doing anything and everything to continuously learn. I think all of us are continual learners, whether we want to admit it or not. The moment you get to the space of complacency that I've seen it all, I know it all, there's nothing else to gain, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And I think that's where a lot of people falter, is that they either don't see the space to grow, or they just don't want to grow in that space. I will admit, again, my grandmother was a farm wife. I have her stubbornness. There's no question I have her stubbornness. And I think you really do have to, in success, have that element of fortitude to believe in your team and in what you're doing. Because if you don't have that belief and that passion, it's really a wasted avenue. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. You mentioned your journey so far, and I'm sure to be successful in this field, in healthcare especially, you have to go through some hardships. And, I'm sure the most successful people in our branch are usually they're people to go through a lot of hardships and got a lot of failures in their journey. Can you give us an example of anything that didn't work out for you and kind of step you back, and you gain knowledge, you gain wisdom from it, and you move forward better?
Yeah, I can give you a couple actually. One was I had a large role, and then the entity's focus became more, no, we want to place you in this railroad track. Let's just say railroad track. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to close down all the intricacies and the connected the dots spaces that I wanted to continue to grow in. So I declined that. I did not want to do that. Unfortunately, after that, I worked with a team that was not what I had envisioned. The role they had never had this certain role before. The team was not what I had envisioned. So that was a huge disappointment. You get very introspective. You get very, I believe I have a self-awareness of my good spots, my blind spots, my stellar spots, my not so stellar spots. And I think that's hard as physicians. We are so driven in outcomes and clinical delivery. And even though there may be a best way, sometimes we have to maneuver around if something didn't work clinically. It's the same thing in life, in, let's say, administrative. There's definitely the thought of you are I don't care who you are in the administrative executive space in healthcare, everybody is potentially replaceable, right? And as humans, we have to accept that and understand that, but not take that as a definition of ourselves. It's a part of ourselves that we need to, and you said the word, learn from and grow from. And that's where you get that resiliency, right? It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm resilient, I'm adaptable. But until you've actually gone through that and had to work through that, it's a whole other piece. And then in the middle of that, my husband passed away suddenly in a car accident in 2020. So here I am, I'm at the pinnacle of my, administrative executive career. And I really had to take a step back and say, you know what? This is not my whole definition. This is a huge part of me, but this can't totally define me. And sometimes that's very, can be very eye-opening especially for clinicians, because we're expected, honestly, to be quote unquote perfect in our care delivery. Whereas I really think our care delivery is made that much better, whether in the administrative space or the clinical space, when we bring our humanness to it. It makes it
Absolutely.
So I got a little philosophical there, Tudor. So
yeah, no, you're very to the point, and I want to kind of circle back on your expertise, the fact that you are a clinician to start with, that went into the administrative part of things. We're not taught in medical school any of this.
Right.
How did you step forward into this kind of different spectrum of activity, so to speak? What was your mindset? How did you embrace the change? Because it was a big change to go from clinical practice to in the administration.
Yeah, I think it goes back to why I wanted to transition. I knew that there was much more. I wanted to make an impact on a greater level. And I'm not demeaning, I'm not making small that individual, that sacred space, clinician to patient interaction, that is sacred space. But how you can make that better for everyone in a community of care delivery, that was at my core. So I was voraciously hungry for, it didn't matter what aspect, whether it was culture, whether it was just culture, whether it was high reliability, whether it was anything to do with operations and delivery, and how to engage. That engagement piece is still such an important issue with our physicians, with our nurses, with our any piece in the delivery system. How you could further promote that and continuous betterment. There's not a threshold ceiling for any of this. It's so attractive to me. We've got to continually get better. So that was at the core of me wanting to get into the administrative space. And I did initially still continue to practice clinically in this initial few years of the administration, but folks couldn't separate the two for me. They couldn't separate me from, hey, you're the chief medical officer. You have to handle why such and such isn't signing their orders, or you have to handle why the computer crashed over here, when I was actually in the middle of a really busy ER. So I had to take myself out of that space to honor both.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to deal with patients is one thing, and I think the relationship that the physician forms and the way it acts with patients is so different than in your role to deal with doctors and nurses. It's a whole different concept.
Yeah, and it's a different. You have to just Tudor, step on you. You have to try to gain the perspective of where each individual is coming from. And I can distinctly remember one Friday afternoon, my first chief medical officer role. I was walking out, and one of our cardiologists, great guy, who I'd worked with for, 15, 16 years, he caught me in the parking lot. And I thought, oh, great. It's a typical Friday, 5:30 at night. What's going on? And he's like, I don't know how you do this, but you are so firm and committed to the process strategically where you're going and how you're going to get there. But you have a way of not pissing off everybody in doing it. And I think that's that genuine, hey, I've got to understand where you're coming from. It's not just what I'm thinking, but I have to gain that perspective in order to make it the best pathway for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can relate to their position, because you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think there are some skills and habits that you used in overcoming this issues, I would say, to deal with people in your activity?
I think fairness. Again, fairness. There's a lot of the humanness aspect. Don't discard, my individual perspectives or strengths, but have those be additive to what you're doing. Discipline. You have to be very disciplined. There are no shortcuts. And maybe I should have seen that, whenever I did math in grade school, I always wanted to do it the long way, the hard way. But that paid off, that paid off later on. There is no shortcut, and obvious transparency and honesty in all of it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting position to be in, because I don't know many people who want to transition from a clinical practice to an admin role, especially dealing with their peers. And it's been, I'm somehow in that position sometime, but it's not easy, because you have to balance the human aspect, as you said, of how they understand communication with you, and not be offensive, be firm, but not be offensive, because you need to get shit done.
Yeah.
And, sometimes people take it the wrong way. And they look at you like, who are you to tell me this? But in a different way, also, I think you need to listen to them, because that's where the feedback comes from. Do you think there is anything to be changed in our current system that we have in healthcare to improve this notion of having physicians administrating physicians?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of data out there, and I believe it, that, entities, I'll just say entities that are managed and directed and have a huge amount of input from physician administrators actually do better in the long run. And again, I think it just goes back because we've been in the trenches as to what it means to get an X-ray done, what it means to get an MRI order. So there's a lot of data out there that entities that are run and directed and managed by physician administrators actually do better in the long run. And it's because we've been in the trenches applying the concepts of not only therapeutic and diagnostic, but physicians have to have a sense of, okay, how's this going to operate? How's this going to flow? They have to think ahead. So I think the more we can introduce concepts of whether it's business management concepts and how they interweave in clinical care. And it's not that I expect because God forbid, I would not be the CFO, in an entity. I would not be the one. But how we can hand in hand in parallel see the connectivity in delivery, I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of companies taken over by, private equity firms. And venture capital and all this stuff, that, a healthcare company being administrated by someone who doesn't have any kind of medical knowledge or healthcare experience, it's a very tough thing to do and creates a lot of friction in the company itself. So what is your opinion in this? Like, how do you see this comparison between those kind of firms that are taking over groups, practitioner groups and hospitals and all this stuff, versus a physician-led team that can have a good understanding of what it is to be working in that system as a physician?
Yeah, if there's not a clinical lead on that, you have to be very careful. You have to get the right, if that person, let's say they're not a clinician, but they're, leading this enterprise. Okay, great. It may take that from an enterprise perspective, but as far as impacting the individual patient and the care delivery, they've got to have the clinician input to 99%. Okay. If they can't understand 100%, they've got to get to 99% of how for the impact, because it makes a difference. There's no question it makes a difference.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Well, let me circle back to your personal journey. And as a physician, we're hearing from everywhere that, especially nowadays, a lot of people have a hard time retiring. They're burnt out. They don't have enough income to retire, and they're worried about what they're going to do, 10, 15, 20 years from now. How do you see this aspect financially? Mostly, in the life of a physician, what do you think is the best approach to have passive income streams that can help us retire or don't want to practice anymore? It's if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you're going to work until you die, right? That's what they say. So
yeah.
How do you see those things?
Yeah, I personally, I can give my perspective, and I've seen others do this, is, find what interests you. Find, when you're transitioning into retirement, as physicians, it's hard for us to stop doing, right? It's so hard. So maybe it's more of a part-time space. Maybe it's more of a locum space. Maybe it's, whatever you would be interested in growing in. Sometimes it's I've seen people totally get away from medicine into spaces that are not healthcare related at all, to grow their creativity or their business side or their, whatever it may be. I myself am even, I'm coming full circle. I'm even considering, okay, do I work, and I have the beauty in as emergency medicine to go back and work a few shifts just because of that, just kind of introspective looking, gosh, that patient relationship was really something special, was really something that, you work so hard for it, so long for it. Don't discount it. Just what can you grow from and what can you continue to learn from? I don't think there are a lot, I'll say this, there are a lot of companies out there in my, my last few years and looking at different spaces that are either, it's kind of, they're in two camps. They're either ready to have the physician input or they just don't see it, what benefit it has from the clinician. I shouldn't just say physician, but clinician input. You just kind of have to continue to search and continue to seek and find. But I think a lot of these companies are still evolving into, this does make sense in some kind of piece in their application, whether it's a digital, the digital transformation is a huge space for people to be able to give input. But again, it's those companies being ready to receive that and understand what that input can do to their offerings. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think
you keep moving, because if you stop moving, you're done, right?
Yeah. And, things are moving fast and faster, I would say. But what I hear often said is that, in the clinical space, physicians don't have enough time to spend with their patients. And that's what people don't understand. Because it's all about the bottom line, right? For those companies to make money, and every minute counts, and every minute is charged and billed, and we need to bring revenue. So at some point, there has to be a break-even moment where, they need to understand that a human connection cannot be just a Siri speaking to a patient,
right?
And getting answers and questions and answers. A human connection is different. It's a little bit of more time, maybe a few more minutes that you need to spend with your patient to create that rapport and, have that connection to let them tell you what they need to tell you. Because otherwise it feels it feels like an AI fake voice that asks them, what is wrong with you today?
It goes back to the engagement piece we touched on.
Yeah.
Without the engagement of both the clinician and the patient, the core of what you're trying to deliver is really diluted. It's very diluted.
Yeah. How do you see this evolving though? Because medicine is not going into the right direction.
Well, I see, a lot of people have different definitions of AI right now. Everybody says AI. Okay, do they really mean AI? What do they mean by AI? I think there's a very valuable space for AI in that it should be, and it can be, supportive, not declaratory, let's say, not declaring this is what you're going to do, more supportive and suggestive in an individual's workflow with a patient. There's a huge opportunity for that. There are some examples, as folks know, with ambient dictation and pulling. Again, that dictation does not get to the result of what's going on with the patient. That takes all the senses, all the capabilities, all the experience, all the background of that clinician with that patient. AI can't capture that. It can support it, but it cannot capture all that. And I know diagnostically, so helpful from, mammogram readings, et cetera, retinal scan readings they're looking at. It's wonderful, but from a supportive standpoint, it needs to be not only, that's in diagnostics, right? It needs to be supportive in therapeutic determinations and in how it fits a clinician's workflow. And the beauty of it, again, I am just getting into the space with AI, is how it can adapt and really incorporate into an individual clinician's workflow. It doesn't have to be, I'm talking one clinician, one patient. I'm not talking 1,000 patients at one time. There's so much opportunity with that one clinician and the one patient, therapeutically and diagnostically, but it has to be supportive. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I don't know if they made any kind of AI so far that
There's so
understands compassion, for example, or empathy. Those are things that they're human by definition.
Right.
So I don't know what they're going to go with this, but that's an interesting question to find out.
Yeah. The clinician needs to apply their, we call it human in the loop, right? We call it the human in the loop. Keep the human in the loop. You've got to keep it in any way, shape, or form, support that human in the loop, right?
Right.
Not replacing, but supporting. And there's just so much out there that's, as I understand right now, there's a lot of capability that could come with that.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. You've been a clinician, and you are a clinician, and you've been in the administration part. If you, with what you know right now, if you look back into your life when you were young, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Continue to grow. Continue to look at, when you look at one thing, look at 5 things. Keep versatile, keep versatile, keep versatile. I would tell every clinician to keep versatile, because you never know, as you keep that versatility, this skill set or that skill set, whatever it may be, may help in whatever situation you find yourself in. Because as we all know as clinicians, even if we're taking care of a patient, there are so many peripheral elements that can impact that your versatility is going to help you to manage that. And don't lose your humanness. Don't use your humanness. Stay stubborn.
That's good advice. Any projects going on right now? Anything that you look forward to?
Yeah, I am actually going to be teaching a course on AI with a physician leadership entity I'm real excited about in April. So I'm gathering my materials and thoughts for that. And again, looking to say, hey, do I want to get back? That's bringing me back in. Do I want to get back into a little at the bedside to grow the other side, right? To grow the AI side, or to grow, whatever next venture I'm interested in. But I always keep, you got to keep the curiosity. That's the word I was looking for earlier. You've got to keep the curiosity, because once you lose your curiosity, it's backwards, and we don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. Keep your curiosity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what drives everybody, right? Basically. How can anybody get in touch with you, know more about yourself, what you're doing?
Yeah, I can give you my email, which is a pretty straightforward but boring email. I don't know if you're going to put it with the recording tutor, but it's maria.granzottimd@gmail.com. You can get a hold of me.
Awesome.
And I'm on LinkedIn also. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably even easier because the email's in there.
Yeah. I'm sure people can relate to your journey, and I'm sure a lot of people they want to do administration can get an advice from you. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope everything is going to go well for you.
Thank you so much, Tudor. Thanks for having me. And I need to listen to your podcast, that's for sure.
Please do.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.